This year, I finally get to play tackle football. I get to wear a helmet and all the pads and everything. 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from the coach. We were drafted like we were pros. My team is the Cardinals. Someday I want to be in the NFL. My dad says, you're maybe the littlest person out here, so you have to be the most aggressive. The bigger kids will run you over. I can't let that happen. Dad says, if you let them push you around, they'll think you're a girl. My name is Chipper Webb. I'm 10 years old, and I'm not scared of nothing.
I'm nervous like a little kid. Am I really doing this? It's 6:30 a.m. in January. It's dark and cold. I'm old. I'm trans. I haven't played full contact football since high school. I met this group at a festival last summer. One of their players said, "You look like you can play a little bit." I thought she was kidding. 2 months later, I'm at Reaper's women's football practice thinking, will they accept me? My name is Carly Webb. I'm 51 years old. I'm excited and I'm scared. And I was proud that the piece of the story that you just heard was a part of this awesome book. Athlete is Agender. This has been, in some ways, writing a part of it. I was very proud to be a part of it. I still can't believe that the editors allowed me to be a part of it, but I'm glad they did. And they're here with us on Transposition Sports tonight. Katie Locke, Nicole Melleby first. Congratulations. Second, welcome to Transposition Sports. It's an honor to have you, and it was an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now, right out of the gate, you both realize that you've just made potentially one of the most controversial sports books, maybe since Ball 4 right now. What has it been like for the both of you to see the critical acclaim that the book's already gotten, and it hasn't even released yet, even in the climate that we're in right now?
Well, I know it's funny because, I mean, it was always going to be a bit of a controversial book, but when we had pitched and sold the book, it was a different time politically. We had a different president. We didn't really know where things were going. And of course, we knew that it was always going to be somewhat controversial just by nature of the content. But yeah, so it kind of, we got worried a bit when things started changing, just because all of a sudden it became more important. And we just wanted it to get it into as many hands of these kids who need it as much as possible. And, it started seeming like it was going to be more of an uphill battle to do that. But no, people are excited about the book. And I think that's huge.
What excited you both about taking this project on? This is something you've been working on for almost 3 years now.
Even longer than that. So Nicole and I edited This Is Our Rainbow, which was a fiction anthology for the same age group for readers like 10 to 12. And that came out in 2021. And pretty much as soon as we had turned the final draft of that in, we were like, okay, what's next? We want to keep working together. We really love working together. And we felt like we weren't done telling queer stories. And we bounced around a lot of different ideas. And then I was on a walk with my dad, and he mentioned something about actually AJ Sass's story in This Is Our Rainbow. And it's about a gymnast. And my dad was like, that was so great to see, because I feel like a lot of queer kidlit is about like artistic kids and kids that are in theater and they're writing or they're drawing. We're not really seeing a lot of queer athletic kids. And he said, as a straight guy, my introduction to queer people when I was growing up was through sports. And I was like, oh my gosh. I like pulled out my phone and immediately texted Nicole, because Nicole is a huge basketball fan, a huge WNBA fan. And I was like, what about sports? And Nicole is not always the fastest texter. I have to emphasize how fast this reply came back. And it was in all caps. And it came back like, yes, we have to do that. Oh my gosh, like right away. And it felt like it clicked right away. Felt much more natural than our other ideas. We knew what we wanted to do. We immediately started to pull things together, like, oh, we want that person. Oh, well, obviously we have to have AJ Sass again, because his story literally was the inspiration for starting this anthology. So yeah, it came together really organically, and it just felt like it had a lot of momentum up behind it right away.
Nicole, you wrote in the book about the WNBA.
Yeah.
First, who's your team?
The New York Liberty.
Okay, all right. We're here because I'm a Liberty fan. I'm a Liberty fan literally since the league's first year. I've been a fan of the New York Liberty. And what does the visibility of seeing queer women out there getting after it on the biggest stage in the sport mean for you?
I mean, it changed a lot for me. I had always, been a fan of women's basketball because I played basketball in school. But because there wasn't as much visibility of the WNBA and women's sports, it ebbs and flows. It wasn't something that stuck around for me as much as maybe I had wished it had. And then when I started getting back into it and just seeing all of these, women just being themselves and dressing like themselves and, having girlfriends on other teams or married partners on the same team. And it kind of just blew everything wide open for me because, you get to see different representation sometimes in the media on TV shows of different characters who end up being queer, but it was like a real people in the media in a different way for me. And it wasn't someone in a costume and makeup department dressing them a certain way. These are the people being themselves and looking like themselves, and being able to see that kind of helped me say, okay, well, how do I want to look? How do I want to present myself? And like, how can I be comfortable in my own skin the way that they are and the way that they're showing me that I can also do that. So it's just really fun to be able to, the sport I loved and these athletes that I loved watching be really powerful on the court, just getting to have that representation off the court as well.
Quickly, favorite WNBA player is?
Courtney Vandersloot.
Good pick. Now, getting back to this great work that you've done, when you were brainstorming this, who were some of the names that you ended up getting in here that you said at the beginning, this person has to be here, or this person has to be here? Who were some of the people that you said had to be here and you were able to land them? And what was it like to know that you did get them to be a part of this?
I mean, you were like on that first list. So I was super excited when you said yes. Yeah, no, seriously, you were part of that first list.
You really were. You were one of Katie's first,
Yeah, I was super excited when you said yes. So, I mean, pretty much everybody we wanted, we got into this anthology, and we feel pretty lucky because that's the second anthology we've been able to do that with, where we just go out and we shoot our shot and we get people. Getting Adam in the anthology was so great. Skylar getting in the anthology was really great. And then going to kidlit authors and being like, hey, did you play a sport when you were a kid? Do you still play a sport? Do you want to talk about playing a sport? That was more challenging than you might expect, because I think the queer kids who turned into authors they don't have a lot of overlap with the queer kids who played sports when they were kids. So we learned a lot. We kept reaching out to people and they'd be like, no, I hate sports. And we were like, oh, well, we love sports. Do you know someone who loves sports? And that's how we got like Eric Brown is one of my favorite authors, and he's also local to me. And Alex London was like, I think Eric played a sport when he was a kid. And I like emailed Eric and he's like, did you play a sport when you were a kid? And that was our pitch to our fellow authors. It was much less formal than we went out to our public figures like you and Adam, Skylar, and Karina. And sometimes people came through different people. Like Karina came through AJ Sass. So that was a suggestion that came from AJ. So that was really fantastic and pretty much got everybody we wanted. We were really excited. We thought it was really important to have really solid trans representation in this anthology. We wanted to be really mindful of that. Queer representation in sports is so important across the board, but it's particularly important right now to be talking about trans kids in sports, because they're the ones being targeted and they're the ones who are looking for a home in sports. So we were really mindful of making sure that we had trans and non-binary rep in sports kind of across the board.
We also really wanted to have, it was interesting because we wanted to have a wide array a wide array of identities, but also of sports, different kind of sports, team sports, solo sports. And I think for me, we did the best we could, and I'm happy with how it turned out. But for me, the eye-opening part was when we were trying to get all the kidlit authors and hearing them be like, no, I hate sports because of the locker rooms, or I hate sports because it wasn't welcoming to me. And now to be able to have this anthology to maybe touch kids who might end up or might have ended up going that way, but now maybe we'll be able to find a home instead. So that also was a really interesting part of putting all the names together.
Yeah, and it really came out in some of the sports. Like we have one of the reviews pointed out that we're a little overrepresented in ice sports and water sports. And I was like, it's fascinating because those are locker rooms that I would not want to be in because there's like so conforming in so many ways, right? But those are also places where we saw teams, like people really talked about the way that their team supported them because it was like an individual sport, like you're only in the pool with yourself or you're only on the ice with yourself, but the support system around these people was really supportive in ways that wasn't always reflected in other sports. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience. I think we learned a lot while doing it.
Now, one thing also, talking about diversity of sports, Katie, you wrote something on being being an equestrian sport on a horse and how you found a lot from that experience. That story spoke to me.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I always think it's like a great fun fact. I'm really fun at parties. So my non-disaster fun fact that I like to talk about is how equestrian sports are all gender teams and everybody competes equally. And I think that for me, like in retrospect, I was like, oh, that was a place where I could figure myself out without having this gendered influence on my sport. Like nobody was like, oh, you can't do that because you are a girl. Nobody, you can't do that. That only boys jump fences like that. Nobody ever said that because that's just not how the sport works. But it also allowed me to really think about my body and the way that I experience the world as a non-binary person in a totally different way, and really come to terms with my body in a way that benefits my sport and really, again, take away the gender from everything that I do.
For the both of you, because again, I encourage people to get this book because these stories are great. These stories need to be told. Again, you talked about Eric Brown's. I enjoyed his because I think a lot of Little League parents need to read that. But you also have the history in there. Billie Jean King, Carl Nassib. You have Cece Telfer wrote something for it. There's a section sidebar on Leah Thomas. You know that certain people are going to take shots at you. What's your thoughts on that? How do you plan on dealing with that?
I mean, I think for both Katie and I, and I'll let Katie speak a little more because they're going through things a little more in the spotlight than I am right now. But this is what we do. We write queer books for kids. So we are locked and loaded and kind of ready in a lot of ways. And I mean, you're never fully ready. But it's what we specifically do. I always tell, so I taught at an MFA that was all concentration. So not just kidlit, also fiction, nonfiction. And so I used to tell all the students that the biggest difference between kidlit and other genres of writing, I think, is that we are thinking about our audience way more than anyone else has to. So we're already thinking about that. We're already thinking about who we're writing for. And for us, writing for queer kids has always been a priority. So when it came to a book like this, it's just an extension of that for us. I think that now politically, we're probably a little more in the spotlight than we might have thought, especially with book bannings and sports all pulled, into one. But I think it's something that we are aware of going in, unfortunately, and something that maybe we're not prepared for, but at the same time, we are ready to fight for. Katherine, if you want to dive in.
Yeah, everything Nicole said is right. You know, this both of us have been pretty widely challenged and widely banned. Sometimes I like find Nicole's titles on a list and like send her a screenshot and she's like, that one? That's not even my gayest title. And I'm like, I know, but they're really mad about that one. So yeah, we're both frequently on lists across the country. So it's not something that's new to us. And for all of the kidlit authors who are in the anthology, they've all been challenged and banned at this point. So nothing new to them either. So I think that this is something that we've kind of accepted comes with the job right now. I hope it won't always come with the job, but I think that it is part of the job right now. And we believe in the work that we do. We believe in this anthology. We believe in the right of child readers to read the books that will help them and to save their lives and make them feel like they have a place in this world. And so that's what we're fighting for. And that's why we're excited to release this book.
Coming to the exit questions now. First one or two. What can you tell me about a little kid named Chipper Webb, and why was it important that that little kid is in this book?
I can take that one. Um, I I think that Chipper Webb didn't know about how fantastic the life could be and how big the world could be, and that finding yourself doesn't mean giving up other parts of yourself, that you don't have to lose one community to gain another, and it's possible to live your fullest life with all of the things that make you you. And I think, you know, I wish that this book had existed in 1981.
I definitely would agree with you, but no, a quick follow up to that. What about that particular story spoke to the both of you? Because you were telling me you really wanted me to be a part of that, and I'll admit I was a little bit afraid of writing it because I thought you guys were going to reject it. Seriously, I really believed that you would reject it.
Well, I think it's. I think it was important for us first and foremost before we even saw the piece, which we can talk way more on too. But before we even saw that, we thought it was important to have your voice here just because of the work you do in sports and as this person who talks about sports and in interviews and does all this really great work about sports and queer sports and athletes in particular. And we both thought when Katie brought your name to the table, I was like, yes, this is exactly the sort of voice that we want represented in this book. So before we even saw the piece, we were like, this is a voice that deserves to be in this book.
And I think that you did. So we wanted your perspective because I feel like you have a bird's eye view, like an eagle's eye view of the landscape of what it's like for professional athletes, queer professional athletes right now, in a way that like Nicole and I get glimpses, but it's through media, it's through journalists like you, right? So we wanted somebody who could really see everything. And I thought you did a really good job of taking your story and showing us that entire landscape, but through your story. And I think, it took us a while to get there. We had to wrangle this big story. You had so many thoughts and so much to say. But I think that we got there because I think that, you have seen a transformation in queer sports.
Good
that
word.
Like Nicole, yeah. But like Nicole and I got to grow up like after the turning point, really. And so getting somebody who had seen the turning point, who had lived the turning point, and got to come back to sports. Like, I think that that's like something that I always think about with your story. It was like that return to sports is so powerful. That is so powerful. I can't even really wrap my mind around how that must have felt, but I think that your story does a really good job of trying to explain that, of like, that this was like the final piece of finding yourself again without losing who you had become. And I think in doing that, you just have such a great perspective.
You have no idea. And I can tell you, I thank you both for letting me be a part of it, because a part of that healing that you're talking about was writing this, because it was the first time I really sat down and said, what did this journey mean to me in a very grand sense? There were times I was writing drafts and I was in tears. And that leads me to the exit question, because there's an email that you sent to all the contributors talking about all the different things. And there was a sentence in the email that really spoke to me. And it's not an easy time to be sending very queer books into the universe, but it's also the most important time to be sending those books into the universe. With that in mind, why do we need this book on library shelves and school shelves and bookstore shelves right now?
I mean, I think it's important for people, especially right now, to see that these, there's no harm in any of this, that that this is something that kids need and kids deserve, regardless of identities, regardless of anything. They deserve to have fun and feel safe. And I think it's important also for the kids who maybe are watching the news or seeing things about all of these different, people coming at them and trying to take that safe space away, to be able to give them something like, no, look, like, you belong here. Here's a bunch of other people who also belong here. And I think it's important too, and it was important to us, that we didn't lie to them at all either. We do have stories where it's tough. CC Telfer's is tough. It was, I think it's hopeful, and I think that was important too, to give them hope. It's important right now to give them hope, but it's also important to be as honest as possible. And I think that's why they need it now. And yes, Katie, if you'd like.
I think it's also important to show that what's happening in legislation and what's happening at school board meetings, what's happening at town council meetings, can't erase the progress we've made, and it can't erase the history. I think that there's this perception sometimes that like trans people are new. This is like a 21st century invention, or that queer people in sports is that just happened because of the last 15 years, or they can blame it on certain presidents. That's not true. We've had queer people in sports since sports have begun. We've had trans people in the world and trans people playing sports since sports have existed, since communities have existed. And I think that that's part of what we want to get out there, is with those historical profiles of famous athletes, we also are talking to the librarians and the teachers and the parents who are in these kids' lives, saying the big athletes that you grew up with, the ones that you remember from your childhood, they were queer, and like, you're okay. Everyone's still safe. Everyone still loves the sport that they played in. You still watch tennis, and Billie Jean King only made tennis a better sport and a more exciting sport by being a part of it. So I think that that's part of what we're trying to get out there right now. And I think it's really important right now. I want every kid to feel like they can play sports. I want the kids who have queer and trans like teammates to pick up this book and be like, oh yes, my experience of sport is not diminished by my friend Cassidy playing this sport with me. Like, this is all, we're all in this together. And that's why it was really important for us to have like how to be a good ally in there as well, because we're talking to every kid who plays sports. And this is, I don't think we predicted the time we'd be releasing this book. I don't think we necessarily would have chosen this time as the ideal time to be releasing this book. But I do really believe what I wrote in that email. This is the most important time to be releasing the book. And it is so important that we reach every school and every library and every town that we can reach with this book. Kids in Iowa and kids in New York, and kids in California and kids in Washington, and kids in Texas and kids in Florida. Everybody deserves to read this book and to feel like they have a place in athletics.
Book Is Agender. It drops on May 13th. You can pre-order it still. So get out there. Like I said last week, this is a good book. Buy it. Katie Locke, Nicole Melleby, thank you for being on Transposition Sports, and even more so, thank you for giving me the honor to be a part of something so important and also so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For being a part of it.
Now, Athlete Is Agender hits the shelves May 13th, and I'm going to tell you, you want to buy this book, especially for the young sports fan in your life. For me, being a part of this effort was special. It was an honor to write something for this book, and I'm looking forward to people reading it and enjoying it. What's also been special for me is putting things together here at Transposition Sports and being part of the Transpositions News team. And if you like what you see, if you like what we do, hit up our Patreon, leave us some money so we can keep doing what we do and do it even better. And while you're at it, subscribe to my YouTube channel at CharSports 1. In these tough times, news from our perspective is critical. And I love doing my part, and we welcome your support. For Transposition Sports, I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.